Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all are enjoying B-Side so far. So before getting started, I just have a quick question for you. Who came here just by looking at the talk style? Now? So I'll repeat the question. So who came here just by looking at the talk style? Lovely. We have a show of hands. So the title itself is just to get your attention and make you more curious, which is the theme of today's talk. No matter how many millions or billions you might invest in your security controls, if you don't have adequate awareness, as an organization, you will fail. So today I'll walk you through on how we did actually compromise bank just because someone was so curious enough to click on a link and enter his credentials. So we'll be starting off with a bit of introduction and red team infrastructure that we set up, and we'll be moving on to how we gained access to their internal networks, and we were looking at what are the privilege escalation techniques we tried out and how we did compromise the entire domain. And finally, we have few key takeaways for the blue teams to integrate with their own SOC or security controls out there. And if time permits, we have few minutes for question and answers, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So starting off with, we are Zero, a major managed service provider in the UK, and we have few offices in South Africa, a lot of offices in the UK. We are also a certified B Corp, cyber scheme sponsor, also CREST accredited penetration testing providers. Up next, who am I? I'm a red team senior consultant at Zero. I have around 4 years of offensive security experience, and I love adversary simulation, red teaming, and in my spare time, I love to walk around with EDS, trying to bypass it and see if any of the techniques aren't getting detected. As I have few credentials in offensive security space, and I've listed, it's not a huge list, but I've listed it out there. And as we all know, red teaming is a team sport. We need experts from all aspects of the cyber food chain for an assessment to go well, because you didn't know like what you want to do in the next stage. It's all about the element of surprise in red team. So whenever I needed help, I looked in Rahman, who is our head of red team, and us, head of cyber. Z comes in with around 25 years of experience, and that guy's pretty old. He knows, he's been there out since pentest was not a thing. So he brought an enormous amount of wealth to the assessment and added advantage. I led the assessment myself, but whenever I needed help, Z and Abs came in, and Abs, on the other hand, he's one of the best social engineers I've ever worked with. This guy would literally sell you your own car for a higher margin. So that's how good he is. So starting up with red team infrastructure. For a red team assessment to go well, we need the right tooling, and we need to ensure that we can rely on that tooling. So for that purposes, we had a couple of C2s with one redirector each, hosted in AWS and GCP with legitimate domains and SSL certs installed in it. We also had one GoFish server, which some modifications were made to it just to avoid signatures, not to get flagged by any email detection security controls that are out there. Also, just before we start the assessment, we knew what type of websites the bank employees were interacting on a daily basis with our preliminary reconnaissance. So we registered 15 plus lookalike domains, and I've listed few of the semantics that we came up with, and that's how the domains look like. And we did this very early on just to make sure that our domains pass through all sorts of proxy verification and domain interpretations that's out there. So up next, let's brief about the mission. Obviously, target bank's name was an Acme Bank. I just came up with a fictional name. As you all know, Acme is the legit term for something that's fictional that's out there in cyber. A bit of history here. The bank actually are being assessed every 6 months, and they understand themselves to have really good security awareness programs out there, phishing videos, phishing emails, all sort of awareness programs that's out there. They have bought it and they are going through it on a daily basis, or let's say, for example, in a half-yearly basis or in a monthly basis. And this bank had a global presence, and they had around $20 billion of assets all over the globe, 4,000 plus employees. And coming to the assessment's duration, it was around 80 days spread across 6 months period of time, but we were able to achieve our goal much earlier than that. And the objective initially we had was one, which is to breach their external network, gain access to their internal systems, and to make our presence felt inside the bank's network. So that was our initial goal, but we also had improvising goals coming along the way once we achieved one of the objectives. I'll talk about that in upcoming slides. So, first things first, as we all know, as all traditional rating starts, we started the assessment with reconnaissance, open source intelligence, and we mapped out their entire attack surface. We enumerated valid usernames, emails, VPN endpoints, and breach credentials, and more. But this specific recon part is where we spent a great deal of time. We looked at the news, the ongoing events of their organizations. We were scouring through procurement sites to see if they had any arrangements with third parties. Is there any merger or acquisitions happening so that we could facilitate a supply chain attack or gain access through another merger or an acquired company. And we had all of this information in place. We essentially created a dossier of all of the data that we collected so far. And we put it up in a spreadsheet. It was very organized, separate tabs. So because from our past experience, we know that if you are going to conduct a social engineering assessment, or if you're going to do phish someone during a red team, you need that data in hand, and you should be ready to talk about to the person that you should be able to convey the data that you have so that the assessment would be more believable. If you are phoning up the help desk and saying, I need access to this, you need to have your data in place, and you could build up the rapport with or the relationship with the help desk so that your phishing scenario is believable. So, we tried to look at all of the legacy systems, routers, and everything that's hosted out there. But on a later point, we came to know that none of the externally hosted assets had any vulnerabilities or misconfigurations that we could take hold of, or we could leverage it to gain initial access. Their external network was pretty fortified, so we couldn't gain access through that way. There was one router, if I remember correctly, out there somewhere in Europe, which looked interesting, but later on it didn't lead to anywhere. So we pivoted from the traditional route, and we wanted to go through the social engineering element of it. We did a number of campaigns, which iterated each and every time. We didn't get any luck at start. We sent it to a number of users, and we then again sent it to another number of users, but we weren't gaining any traction at all. So what we tried to do is we started to profile users based on their LinkedIn, and we targeted specific users. And obviously, if you're going to send a phishing email to a head of cyber or a CISO, that's not going to yield anything for you. So we targeted someone who had less cyber awareness. We targeted, but guess what? That happened at this point. So we thought to ourselves then, there was a couple of brainstorming sessions happening inside our team, and we thought, okay, let's split from here. And we also didn't know if the emails were ending up in the mailbox or in spam, because obviously you're doing it from external perspective. So we thought, let's not add any links. Let's go with a combination of email phishing and phishing scenario. So usually most of the red teams, they shy away from the phishing scenario of phoning up or calling up any of the employees of the target organization. But we at Zen Zero, we take everything as a challenge and we do it because we obviously have apps. So we came up with the specific scenario where we created a document, which wasn't a document, just a HTML template, and we put it up in an email, sent across to multiple users in the bank. But we also had a specific number in the footer of the email. We procured this number through Skype, and matching this with the previous recon that we did, we matched as many number as possible, the same area code, also the last 2 digits of the original help desk that the bank has. And we sent it to a number of employees within the bank, and we sent it again to another number of employees within the bank, but nothing happened. And we waited for a while to someone to phone up the actual number that we sent them. So one user called John calls back to our number. And I think it was 3 a.m. on a Thursday morning. This chap, he was at the railway station, and he was so desperate and actually curious about what's in the document, and he needed access to this document. So he called us back. One of our members in the team picked up the call and goes like, "This is Acme Bank's help desk. How can you help? How can I help you?" So John explains the situation to us, and the team member says, "We have got this issue quite a time in few days, so we'll help you out, so don't worry." And we actually asked John to enter malicious URL, and we said it out to him verbally. We didn't send him to email, we didn't send him to text message, we didn't do anything. We just spelled it out loud on a call. And John enters it into his corporate laptop, gets blocked. At this point, I thought John would get suspicious, but he didn't. So we thought that link was being flagged by any domain or DNS providers out there, but we asked John to hold for a minute, and we hung up the call. And we created another URL, another domain, another malicious phishing site, and called John again. John picked up the phone, and he was like, "Are you ready this time?" We're like, "Yeah, we are ready. Here's your another URL. Please go through it." And again, he goes through it. Nothing happens. The same blockage is in place. So we thought, okay, something's wrong with your corporate network, or maybe they have really good security protections or web filters out there. And John paused for a bit, and he thinks to himself, and he informs us on the call, "I have an urgent call and I have to take it right now. I can't speak to you guys now." So he hangs up on us on call, and we thought to ourselves, the pressure starts to kick in, and everybody's second guessing a choice to call him back. And as abs being abs, he called John again once more, without hesitation, in just a couple of minutes after John hung up. Guess what? There was no response at all. We all thought this was the end. And me, I was like Tony Stark on this gif. I was literally wanting John to answer the call, but nothing happened. After a few minutes, I'm sitting there. Should we have called him? And guess what? John calls us back, and he's munching food on his mouth. It was around 2 a.m. at that time. Probably he was making himself a sandwich. So this time, we asked John not to enter the URL in his corporate laptop, but on his mobile device. I don't know for what reason it allowed us in, but there were no security implications or security controls that were present on the mobile devices. We asked John to enter his credentials, and this time he was able to browse to the URL that we sent him. So once he goes through it, we asked him to enter his credentials, his authenticator code, and everything goes well. And one of the members of our team captures the credentials in the backend and logs in and adds our Zen Zero Authenticator app to his M365 account. Also, from the previous recon that we did, there were few mentions of RSAs and RSA tokens being used within the organization, and there were a few logos in few of the websites that's out there. So we as a final step, we asked John if you could give your RSA token code for security verification, that would be great. Again, John, munching on his food, gives out the RSA token. So we got it. Finally, so far, we have access to M365. Once we got into M365, this time we were confident and we thought was, okay, something's happening now. We have gained some success in a couple of months. So once we got into access, we had access to departmental SharePoint slides, technical documents, what type of softwares they were using, what type of hardware that's been used around the bank, and there were a lot of Excel files containing credentials there, and there were also VPN user guides which we were hunting out to see, because that's the only way you could gain access to the internal network, because Azure was accessible. I don't know for what reason they have provided access to a non-technical person, but we were able to log in inside Azure and we gathered usernames, system details, if the devices were compliant or not with M365, and what are all the servers that are being synced. We had all of those data. And we also profiled John as much possible, and we knew that at some point we would need to impersonate this guy, because just by looking at M365, we came to know that no other possible ways there just to impersonate John and gain access. So we ID'd him for a month. We were looking at his employee number. We knew more than John would know about himself. We knew his ID number, seat number in the office, what office he works from. Also, we even knew his dog's name. Another fun fact during the the assessment was John called us for a legitimate query. He didn't know there is still a written assessment going on or he's being hacked. He phoned us back. He asked a legitimate query we didn't know the answer for. So we proxied it to the original help desk of the bank, asked them what's the solution. They gave it to us and we sent it out to John to his email. So that was crazy. Anyways, moving on. So you might ask, if you had everything, you said you had RSA token code and you have M365 credentials, why you didn't log in? Because John was an absolute workaholic. This chap works at a bank in a non-IT field or in a non-IT department, sends text messages or Teams messages and even emails at 3 a.m. in the morning. Who does that if he works in a bank? If I work in a bank, I would go happily sleep after 5 p.m. So, again, coming back to the topic, we needed an RSA token code. We had the PIN code, but we didn't have the token code, which is the authenticator of the RSA itself. We went through all the way to his first joining email, but it was one time only, so we couldn't actually use it. So, bringing back the pieces to gain access to VPN, we had the SSO, that's M365 credentials. We needed RSA token code. So to do that, we actually probed bank's original help desk, asked them what the process to do a current installation. And they said, if you want a new installation of the RSA token code, the previous installation that you have might be invalidated. So we thought to ourselves, oh, that's a bummer. And if we do this and if we call the help desk and if John gets notified, assessment ends. So coming back to John's personal and travel details, we knew that John is going for a vacation after a week from Europe to another place. And he had booked his flight tickets, and for some crazy reason, he has decided to leave it out in his M365 or SharePoint folders, and we got hold of it. And we knew that at this certain time, at this certain place, he's going to board his flight. And one negative point that we had was just a 3-hour window that we had. So as soon as he boards the flight, we need to make sure that we have everything in place, email the IT help desk, call them, reset the RSA token, and gain access to the VPN that we have. So 3 hours window in our office room, few of the members were there and I was working remotely, and we told them to put up a flight radar and the flight plan of the plane that John's going to take. It was all on screen. Everybody was screen sharing and we were literally waiting for him to board the flight. Once we saw that the flight took off from the airport, we called the bank's help desk. We requested for RSA token reset. That was successful, and we received a QR code from the help desk to John's email. We registered our own RSA token authenticator, and we also deleted the follow-up email from the bank's actual help desk. Also, we made to make sure we cleared our tracks. So from our fake bank help desk, we sent out John an email saying that your new RSA token code has been extended, so this is the new token code that you should be using. And we deleted the original email. And John is above 30,000 feet on sky. He doesn't know he's being hacked. Now we have 2 hours left. We logged into the production VPN environment. So before doing that, we created a new Azure VM. Authentication was successful, but however, there was compliance checks on the device and that failed, and we weren't able to log in into the production VPN. So we were looking at all other sorts of VPN endpoints that I've gathered from the recon phase. And Z comes on call and he says, "Rid, did you try the test VPN?" I was like, "No, why would I try that?" And no, he tried. There was one specific string as test1.bank.vpn, and I tried it out and we got in. For some reason, they didn't have compliance checks over there. Personally, I thought it's just a test VPN to see if the VPN is working or not. But later on, we found that test VPN is used for third-party contractors to do pen test and other sort of internal testing. That was up there. It was gold mine for us. But however, from the VPN, there were no servers accessible, just the Citrix endpoint. So VPN was basically a jump box. You have to go to the Citrix to connect to their internal networks. So after we let our point of contact know that we were able to gain access to the internal network, we have gained access to the VPN, and we have gained access to Citrix. They told us, "Now, really great, you have a new set of rules now." I'm thinking, okay, fine. What's that? You have 2 EDRs present, and you should be able to privilege escalate from the standard user that you have compromised already, compromise the domain, monitor bank communication, that's to compromise their exchange servers, and gain access to the cloud application they have. They have built themselves, that's their in-house applications that's out there in Azure. So, phase 2 is that we got access and we pivoted from VPN to Citrix. We started our enumeration to see what's out there into their internal network. For some reasons, command prompt was disabled, but PowerShell wasn't. And another fact is that AD, Active Directory module, was pre-installed. I didn't have to do anything. So all I have to do is run commands, and we enumerated all sorts of critical servers that's out there: domain controllers, certificate authorities, Azure Sync servers, databases, privilege groups, you name it. Everything was in our hand. And this specific enumeration went for 30 to 45 days, and we were so careful that we should be running only specific commands in specific time frames. We didn't run 2 commands within 5 minutes. So that's how cautious we were, and that's how paranoid I was. And after the enumeration, we found out that we had access to 18 terabytes of storage files in shares. And this specific share had sensitive information like bank documents, vulnerability reports, passwords and files, Excels, etc., etc. So we also identified few configurations. We had 50 plus service account had SPN set, and 2 service accounts are part of admin groups, which we were able to curb roast. And you could ask, why did you choose these specific 2 user accounts? Because these specific accounts didn't have password expiration, and they were part of few admin groups. So that's why we targeted these specific 2 accounts. And one server was configured with unconstrained delegation, and one account had generic privileges over the unconstrained delegation server. That's ANSPC1. So conclusion still now is that we need to abuse these two server accounts, need a valid attack path to reach Bob so that we could gain access to the unconstrained delegation system. So this is how our attack path looked like. Once we gain access to Bob's credentials, we would be able to abuse the unconstrained delegation PC, and Bob himself had self and password reset ACLs applied on him to gain privileged group access, and we would be able to access the exchange servers if we did abuse them. Also, remember, we had access to a whole bunch of shares. We literally are sitting on keys of kingdom the whole time, but at that stage of the assessment, we didn't know what passwords we will find. We wrote a simple script in the background to enumerate the searching process, to enumerate the shares, and we made sure the script was stealthy. And I think it queried one folder for 10 minutes, and it had a buffer time of another 10 minutes before it went forward with another share on a folder. So each and every command that we ran in, we replicated in our test environment. So we do this for our every assessments. We replicate the environments out there. We procured CrowdStrike, we procured Trellix. Every command and possible enumeration techniques were tested. There was one living of land techniques that didn't raise any alerts, but that specific technique didn't work within their environment because for some reasons traffic wasn't going out. Although we did create a bespoke malware that evaded CrowdStrike and Trellix within, I think we did that within 10 days of time. So coming to the XDR bypass here. So the configuration is that we set CS Falcon in aggressive mode and Trellix, which had all of the elements in or policies in the trial version. This, just to give you a hint here, this was a configurational bypass, which means that we were able to bypass this only on aggressive mode, not on extra aggressive. We didn't implement any fork and run processes in the malware. This specific malware was only to give you a reverse connection back to your C2. And with that being said, we could use SOX proxy to actually move. We didn't have to be confined in the restricted Citrix environment so far. So we tested out our malware. This is our output from our test environment. So as you can see, CrowdStrike Falcon is up running, endpoint, Trellix endpoint is there. And we got a reverse connection. So after this is being tested out, we try out all the SOX proxy commands using in-packet toolkits that we would be using for curve boosting and all sorts of other stuff that's out there. So once we are certain and we are confident that we drop our malware, we dropped it in. And I was waiting there for 5 minutes to get a reverse connection back. And I thought something was getting flagged. But after 5 to 8 minutes of time, we got a reverse connection back, and everybody in the team, they were rejoicing and they were so happy that we were able to bypass CrowdStrike and Trellix within a few days of time of the assessment that we got in, because we initially didn't have any knowledge that there might be CrowdStrike or Trellix. So this itself was a huge achievement for the team. Also, initiated SOX proxy. Going further, this is the output this is the actual output that we did to abuse the source accounts, and we got the credentials. We did abuse 2 service accounts, but only one password was cracked. After we gained access to that specific account, we laterally moved, and as we expected, that specific account had admin access to a few of the data integration servers, and we used enter PS session. Although the specific user was part of deny logon locally and deny remote logon group, we were able to log in into the systems, and we scoured through all of the shares and files that's out there, and we were able to retrieve the credentials of Bob. If you know, we needed a valid attack path, and there was one case1 script which had the credentials of that specific user, and no alerts were raised so far. So at this point, we had 2 ways to go. One, take the first attack paths, that's to abuse the group ACLs and to abuse unconstrained delegation. But for some reason, when we tried out unconstrained irrigation in our own environment, it got picked up. It's because of you need a specific tool like Rubius to fork and run, inject into a fork and run process to evade it. And we didn't have the time to do the research or implement it because we were in the last 5 days of the assessment. And remember, we started a script that was running in the background. After 15 days, we had the results of the entire shares. And one of the file had the root password of ESXi server. So that was a gold mine for us. So once we logged into the vSphere as root, we saw a domain controller running. And these guys had 50 plus domain controllers in their environment. We targeted one domain controller, which was pretty old. Nobody gave an eye to it. And it was just there syncing for some purposes, and nobody did an update over there. So we thought, why don't we just switch off the domain controller at late hours and exfiltrate the VMDK file and send it out to our own domain that we have hosted. Even if we do that, it wouldn't be logged as a security event. It would be just a network event because the VM would just go down and all they could see is a blip. Not even a single alert would be raised in the SIEM dashboard. So once I got the approval from my senior officials, so they said, yeah, you could go for it. And we switched off the PC, exfiltrated the VMDK file, and copied it to a share folder. And we hosted a malicious domain as Acme at Finance with OnCloud. They also had few web filters in place. When I tried to access the malicious domain that I created from the Citrix environment, it gave me a warning of, this is an uncategorized website, you will not be able to access it after 24 hours. But still, it gave us a 24-hour window. So this itself is a major misconfiguration because in 24 hours, I could literally upload all of the financial documents that I have my hands on. So we exfiltrated the VMDK file and there were no alerts. After 5 days and we were doing post-exploitation, the point of contact says that we have spotted you. And I was like, okay, so that's good, but we have achieved our goal so far. And we thought, how long would it take your SOC to identify us? We did a lot of confident approach. We were just going all guns blazing inside the internal environment once we had the VMDK file. So that's pretty much it, how we did compromise the bank. And a few key takeaways for the Blue Team is that configure your EDRs and XDRs with better detection system settings, saying that make it extra aggressive and prevent only with medium or high as you wish. But I know that's going to be a lot of false positives out there, but it would give you an upper hand on having visibility of all the things that's going out there. And implement advanced IOC with event-based, not just going with the existing IPs or MD5 hashes or other sorts of techniques that are out there. Correlate it with event-based rules and configure alerts on critical endpoints, even if it's an informational alert, because you never know. If your critical systems are being turned off, you should always be suspicious that something's going out there. And configure impossible logons with geo restrictions and make sure that nobody else is trying to impersonate any of your employees. And finally, give out more security awareness with sophisticated security phishing scenarios, or implement red teams and red team assessment with specific use cases and scenarios like we did, so that it would stress your employees, your processes, your procedures that's in your organization. So that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, please go on.